Today I'll be presenting to you a talk entitled Bringing Newly Invented Scripts of South Asia into the Digital World. And my intent and motivation are to share information on the phenomenon of writing systems being invented for minority and indigenous languages today, and to encourage better understanding of how Unicode enables the vitality of such scripts in the digital world. So a little bit about me. I have a background in history and linguistics, but currently I work in the financial technology space doing data science and data management. I have a long and deep association with Unicode, all on a voluntary basis. I have been collaborating with Debbie Anderson and her script encoding initiative since 2005. And through that work, we have succeeded in encoding 27 scripts that I've worked on. In addition to that, 4 number systems, 4 emoji, and various other characters for different scripts. And currently working on 50 additional scripts that have not yet been encoded in the standard. And the emoji that I've worked on are shown down here. And my motivation for all this is to enable people to communicate in their mother tongue on digital platforms, and with the secondary goal of enabling the preservation of all textual records that humans have created since we started writing things down. So I look at language vitality through the lens of something that I call digital language enablement. And so my work on digital language enablement is primarily geared towards the representation of visible language, which is more simply known as a script or writing system. And I focus on this because scripts are often ignored in traditional and applied linguistics and language studies. They're not considered to be true linguistic topics or not actual parts of language. But to me, it's the key method by which humans transmit communication. And so it's, to me, like I flip the pyramid a little bit and say the scripts are equally as important as phonemes and as sound. And I work on this because representation of text or visible language is often the key to accessing and presenting textual information, whether it's analog or whether it's on digital devices. To enable visible language representation, I work on various ways of displaying and inputting language, such as fonts, keyboard design, and also working with natural language processing and machine learning models to allow people to extract information from the text that they are producing. And all of this is kind of embedded within the goal of what if all languages of the world were as digitally native as English? Now, if we were to go and, and we're getting there to some point, but, we're still not there. And the decade of indigenous languages kind of highlights the fact that we are still very far from being digitally native as English is for several languages of the world. Now, the digital language enablement stack is quite deep. So at the top, we have script encoding, and at the very bottom, we have tools and systems that can present information once that script encoding has taken place. So today's focus will be on one aspect of the stack, which is script encoding. And that digital language enablement stack kind of undergirds all other, let's say, areas or silos or vertices or horizontal, segments of usage of textual information within the world, whether it's online or whether it's in the real world. So these are some of the various functional areas of knowledge management that rely heavily on digital language enablement, especially today. So just a quick little set of definitions here. When we're talking about scripts and writing systems and texts, I just want to present a little diagram here that kind of breaks it down for us. So a script is a collection of signs or symbols that are typically used together and share a common history and behavior. And that is distinguished slightly from a writing system, which is a representation of a script as it is used by a single language. So if you look at the large yellow blob there, which contains two Venn circle-ish type things, we see that within the Latin script, we have two writing systems. One is for Romanian and one is for Spanish. And we have overlap of certain characters that are used for both writing systems. And some of those writing systems have individual letters on their own, but all of those letters belong to the Latin script. So any questions on this point so far? Okay, and then both script and writing system are used for representation of text, whether it's on paper or screen or elsewhere, such as graffiti on walls. Now, script encoding for Unicode, most of the folks here already know about Unicode, so I'll just quickly breeze through this. It's the international standard for writing systems, and it has transformed language usage, global communication, scholarship, and language policy around the world. And it is the prime mechanism for enabling uniform storage and exchange of digital text. So the goal is that if a user on one system inputs textual content in plain text in the original writing system, somebody across the world will see the exact same text as was originally represented. And that goes both for input and for display. And as of Unicode version 14, which was released in June of this year, we have almost 160 scripts, but to that point, there are still over 150 scripts that are unencoded, and that is an effort that the Script Encoding Initiative is very heavily engaged in enabling. So I'll go ahead and gloss over the definition of a script within Unicode in the interest of time. So let's move on to, okay, so Unicode presents unprecedented opportunities for indigenous and minority languages by enabling access to information in mother tongue on digital platforms, reduces the cost of development of content. Open source software can rely on Unicode for minority scripts, and it also aids in the preservation and promotion of linguistic diversity. It fosters linguistic plurality and facilitates standard communication in non-standard languages, and also aids in the protection of linguistic and textual sources. So once a script is in Unicode, it cannot be removed for any reason, be it political or be it any other reason. Now, there are several unencoded scripts in Unicode. Several of these are modern, several of these are historical, and a few of these are modern neographies or invented writing systems. So moving on to the primary topic here, scripts in South Asia. So a script in South Asia, or an Indic script, is defined here as such. Indic is not really a geopolitical designation as much as it is a geolinguistic. Indic is not synonymous with India or Indianness, and usage of that term Indic is not intended to subvert current cultural affiliations of a script or a language community. Indic refers primarily to the classical linguistic culture of the Indian subcontinent, which encompasses both Dravidian, Munda, Tibeto-Burman, and Indo-Aryan languages. And for us, more importantly, in terms of script categories, it refers to scripts belonging to the Brahmi script family. That is, scripts that have a common origin, structure, script grammar, and an arrangement. And so that is the little disclaimer I have before going forward. So South Asian writing systems, the origins. So South Asia was the home of an indigenous writing system back in the 25th millennium BCE, in addition to 3 other primary areas across the globe. For some reason, they've left out Mesoamerica here on this map, maybe just too broad to reach out there, but we can include that as a 5th, potentially. The Indus Valley was home to the Indus Valley script. We don't know if it's quite yet a script. It's still undeciphered, and it has its earliest attested record going back to the 4th millennium BCE, which is contiguous to a writing system that was used in Elam and also in Sumeria, very similar to what we now call cuneiform, but the proto-form of that. Proto-Cuneiform. It has no known descendants. And the interesting thing about scripts in South Asia is there is a 1500 year gap between the Indus inscriptions and formal written records. Formal written records appear first in two different scripts. One is Kharoshthi and the other is Brahmi. Kharoshthi was used primarily in Gandhara, which is now in the region of modern Afghanistan and Pakistan, and its usage spread into other parts of Central Asia. And its records are found as far, quote unquote, south as modern day Bihar in the ancient city-state of Patliputra, and also in central India. And the other writing system is Brahmi, which emerged maybe in the 4th century, maybe in the 5th century BCE. Not quite sure what the earliest attested form or a record is yet. But it is out of these two, it is the one script that continues to survive through descendants. Kharoshthi was sort of a graphic dead end. Now, origins of these, people have tried to link the origin of writing in South Asia to the Indus Valley signs, trying to show some continuity of culture and of other sorts of ideas. Going back to the Indus Valley, but we're not quite sure if that is plausible just because there's not enough evidence to support such theories objectively. More plausible origins, we can look to the emergence of Kharoshthi out of Aramaic, and potentially the origin of Brahmi is similar. It could be derived from Semitic writing, it could be indigenous innovation, or it could be a borrowing and an innovation upon a Semitic source. But this here is a picture of Aramaic graffiti, Sogdian graffiti, written on some rocks in Pakistan. These are pilgrims' names written by primarily Sogdian Buddhists as they traveled into India for pilgrimage and other religious purposes. Now, standard Indic scripts emerged through Brahmi, right? So the best known of these, of the earliest record, are the rock edicts of Ashoka, which are dated to the middle of the 3rd century BCE. Brahmi was used throughout most of South Asia and inscribed on pillars in an effort to advertise the various edicts and the laws of the land that Ashoka had devised for his empire. And Brahmi, because of its regional distribution, eventually underwent regional changes and ultimately expanded beyond South Asia all the way into Japan and into Indonesia. So it has quite an expansive reach here. Now, here's an example of Brahmi from an inscription in Lumbini. This is the transliteration of it. But I bring this up primarily because I want to highlight a very key importance here, and that is the way in which Brahmi becomes absolutely ingrained into the South Asian orthographic and linguistic, let's say, zeitgeist or the traditions. So Brahmi, the key characteristics of Indic scripts here are that it's alpha-syllabic. It's primarily written from left to right, and it's based on a classical Indian phonological tradition. These are the Brahmi consonants. This is the Brahmi consonants kind of broken out into their phonological paradigms and with the transliterations. And this is the part that I kind of want to highlight here, is that Brahmi consonants are arranged in a very particular order, that the sounds start at the back of the mouth and they end in the chart at the beginning of the mouth. So, for example, ka, the first character, the first letter of the consonant series, begins at the back as a velar consonant, and the last stop consonant is a pa, which is a labial sound, which is at the end of the list of consonants. Similar situation happens with the vowel repertoire. So these are the Brahmi vowels arranged in their paradigms, and we see a similar pattern here, where which is the primary and the first and the inherent vowel is a back vowel, and we have u, which is a central vowel. And so there's an arrangement here where we have an attempt to encapsulate all the sounds that a mouth can make, starting with and ending in ma. And so hypothetically here we have the sacred syllable om encompassed in this syllable. Just bringing this up as a way to show just how ingrained this system is in both linguistic and in orthographic paradigms within South Asia. The Brahmi differentiated into regional styles, north and south, and differentiation was based on media primarily. So people in the north wrote on bark and paper, which allowed for more angular strokes, whereas in the south, people wrote primarily on leaf, palm leaf, banana leaf, which people began to write with more rounded strokes so that they wouldn't tear the leaf that they're writing on. Now, these are the primary descendants of Brahmi, Tamil, Devanagari, and Bengali. Devesakuru is also a descendant, which is used in the Maldives historically, which has been replaced by Tana. This is a chart that shows graphical differentiation of Brahmi. And as you can see, as of Unicode 14, a large number of scripts derived from Brahmi are used across the world and have been encoded in the standard. Now, the scripts that are shown in black are those primarily used within South Asia. Those shown in orange are used in Central Asia, and those that are in magenta are used in Southeast Asia, and in blue in Philippines and in Indonesia. So here we have a very good example of just how far Brahmi was able to reach and to influence the linguistic and orthographic cultures of large parts of Asia. Most of the modern scripts most of the original conventional scripts of South Asia are encoded in Unicode based upon the ISKI standard, but apart from the conventional scripts, South Asia has seen a lot of activity regarding the creation of writing systems, or what we call neographies. And what I want to present and what I want to argue is that these writing systems are created for various reasons. Now, one of these could be, let's say, we look at Brahmi and its reach across the world and its penetration into various linguistic cultures, and we can say, okay, are people inventing scripts because they want to separate themselves from this very hegemonic, and to use the term hegemonic, script that has been used by predominant linguistic cultures across the globe, or what have you? But before we get into that, let's just look at some historical cases. I already presented the case of the Indus Valley and the Brahmi script, but if we were to look at hypothetically the continuous usage and invention of writing in South Asia, we could say that writing has been continuously invented and reinvented in South Asia since at least the 5th century BCE. Some people might argue that, as I mentioned before, it goes back to the 24th century BCE if you want to tie writing back to the Indus Valley. So what is a neography within South Asia? Now, neography here is a neologism itself. As I mentioned before, that takes neo, which is the word for new, and graphy, the word for writing. And we can say that a newly invented script is basically a neography, just to use a shorter, more concise term. But within South Asia, we will say that a neography is genetically unrelated to other scripts, that is not organically derived from Brahmi or from Latin, and that it is an indigenous creation. Now, the motivations for script creation can be many. I've broken them down into four, let's say, themes. Now, one is the separation from other languages and other scripts. As I mentioned, Brahmi is used across the South Asian subcontinent, and the scripts that are used for hegemonic or for predominant or majority languages in that region are typically written in a Brahmi script. The exception there is Urdu, which is written in a Perso-Arabic script, and that's an exception there. But people who invent scripts, they may want to separate their language from surrounding majoritarian languages in an effort to gain parity with those languages and to show that, hey, I know that my language can be written in Bengali, for example. It can be written in the Odia script, but my language is also distinct from Bangla. It's distinct from Odia, and I'm going to show this distinction by creating a new script for it, which when you see it, will give it a distinctive visual marker for the language and for my community. So even though we're all living in Orissa, for example, or all living in Kerala, when I write in my script, I will show the rest of the state and speakers of other languages that we have a distinctive language and also a distinctive script to boot as well. And a more practical, less emotional motivation is the development of an orthography that is more suited to the phonology of the language. And this is a feature that we see primarily among Tibeto-Burman languages and users who are clamoring to invent a new script for such languages. Now, the features of South Asian neographies. So typologically, we can break them down into three primary types. The majority of them are alphasyllabic. So even though Brahmi even though there's an attempt to separate from a Brahmi-based script, the fact that Brahmi is so conceptually ingrained within the South Asian linguistic mindset, a lot of script creators and inventors actually design a script that is based upon the alphasyllabic structure. So they take that paradigm of Brahmi, starting with ka, ending in pa, and then they design the script following that same arrangement. Another type of script that is used, that is common among newly invented scripts, is an alphabetic type, primarily left to right, but there are some scripts that are modeled upon the Arabic script, which are right to left. And another common type is a syllabary, where a particular sign represents an actual syllable of the language being represented. Now, the majority of these are developed by individuals from within the language community. There are some cases in which there are external inventors. I'll describe one shortly. But the most common of those are missionaries, which attempted to apply a Roman-based orthography to a given language. And for purposes of our discussion here, those Latin-based scripts are excluded from the category of neography, because we're talking about people designing brand new scripts from scratch that have absolutely no prior graphical existence. The motivations we already discussed, creating a distinct or visible identity for the script. But in many cases, script inventors are motivated by producing the first written form of a language. A lot of the languages for which scripts are being invented have not priorly been written, or have been written in a Roman alphabet, which the community may consider to be foreign. A lot of these scripts come to the inventors in the form of a dream or a vision that they have. So I'll discuss a little bit about that later too. And this phenomenon is not going away. So script creation in South Asia is quite active, and such scripts are proliferating on a yearly basis. And one of the challenges, both for practical and for Unicode purposes, is that there is often internal competition amongst scripts within a given community. So a particular language may have, let's say, 2 or 3 different members of the community who are driven to invent scripts, and those scripts are often at odds with each other in terms of the rate of adoption or the rate of promotion, and we can talk about that a little bit more as well. So thankfully, as of Unicode 14, there are several neographies that are already in the standard. And we have others that are in the pipeline. Most recently, a script used for writing Mundari, a Munda language of Orissa, has been approved by the Unicode Consortium. And we have at least 3 viable scripts that are pending inclusion, which are currently being discussed by the Unicode script ad hoc. And these are Sunuwar, Talong-Siki, and Gurung Kema. So the classic South Asian geographies are known as Old Chiki, Wuran Chiti, and Sora Sompeng. These are examples of these scripts. The Old Chiki was developed by Rabindranath Murmu in 1925 for writing Santali, a Munda language. And he wanted to provide a distinctive script for Santali in which the glyphs had some sort of relationship to the natural world in which the Santalis lived. So the letter forms resemble abstract elements that are familiar to the Santali and their world. Now, Warang Chiti was developed by Lako Bodra for writing Ho, a Munda language, in 1950, and it was developed primarily for transmitting the indigenous belief system of the Ho. And Lako wanted to present a new script for capturing the cultural and religious traditions of the Ho as an alternate to the Roman orthographies that were being promoted by Christian missionaries. He felt that the Ho native traditions should be conveyed and should be communicated using a native writing system as well. And then Sora Sompeng, which was developed by Mangai Gomango for writing Sora, a Munda language, back in 1936. And this was also invented as a liturgical script for communicating and for expressing Sora religious practices. In a similar vein, in the Northeast, at that time, the Chin state was part of British India. And in that state, there's a language called Tedim, which is a Tibeto-Burman language. And in 1902, Pao Chin Hao, a member of the Tedim-speaking community, had a vision in which he was presented with a syllabary of 1,050 different signs. And he related that he was sick at that time, and when he was able to finally write down all of the 1,050 signs, his illness went away, and he was then able to articulate a new belief system for the Tedim speakers, which he called Light Beyond, or script religion. And this religion, or this belief system, still practiced today, not only within Chin State, but in the Tedim speaking diaspora in Malaysia and other parts of Asia. Now, in the 1910s, Pao Chin Hao took his original syllabary, which he believed may have been too complex, and distilled it down into an actual alphabet. And he added standalone tone marks to the alphabet, which are required for the distinctive expression of the Tedim language. So a lot of the letters that are in the alphabet were derived from the syllabary that he invented. Now, another script is one that was developed by Mangal Singh Masaram in 1928 for writing Gondi, which is a Dravidian language. Now, this script is also based on Brahmi, and it follows the same structure of the alphabetic pattern of going from ka to pa. And you see, the interesting thing is, if you look closely at this at the image on the left, you see that there is a horizontal line that extends to the right of every consonantal letter, and that is the way in which the inherent vowel is expressed in this script. And the way in which you apply, or the way in which you produce a bare consonant, is by writing that letter and excluding that horizontal mark. So if you want to write, let's say, ka, which is a circle, you write ka with a line next to it. But if you want to write just a consonant ka, then you write just a circle with no horizontal line. So again, this shows here an example of that mixed phenomenon where you have the desire for a new invented script for a language that previously didn't have a proper orthography, to establish it as a distinct language with a distinct script, but the influence for the script is taken from the hegemonic concepts that are prevalent, that are available in the prevalent writing system, which is, let's say, in this area, may have been Devanagari and also may have been Telugu. So there's also a situation within South Asia where not only are members of the indigenous community producing new scripts, but you have scholars and other individuals who are actively interested in providing the indigenous communities with scripts of their own. So here are two scripts that have been designed by a scholar named Prasanna Sri for Gondi and for Sora. So here you have a case where we already have two different scripts that are used for writing Gondi, that are indigenous scripts, Gunjala Gondi and Masram Gondi. Now we have a third script, and we also have a script that is a classic geography called Sora Sompeng for writing Sora, and now we have the invention of another script for writing Sora. So this individual, Prasanna Sri, has designed at least 19 scripts for indigenous and minority languages of India, and her work is being recognized in various ways by the Indian media. So here we have a case where I don't know how many folks here are familiar with Tim Brooks of the Endangered Alphabet Project, but there's a claim here that due to Tim's description of these scripts that there is some sort of recognition of formality by the inclusion of those 19 scripts in Tim's Atlas of Endangered Alphabets. So this shows like how the sort of cultural importance and the cultural significance of invented scripts within South Asia. Now, as I mentioned, there are competing orthographies. Those three Gondi scripts and the two Sora scripts, they're not really competing because Prasanna Sri's scripts are not really used for any practical purpose. But in Jharkhand and in West Bengal, we have a situation where we have two different scripts that are used in various semi-official capacities that are now vying to become the official formal script for writing Kuruk, which is a Dravidian language that's spoken in various states in central India. So we have Kuruk and we have something called Kuruk Banna, which are both used at various levels within West Bengal and in Jharkhand for writing examinations for print publication, and both West Bengal and Jharkhand have given Kuruk Banna and Tolong-Siki, respectively, some semi-formal recognition as being a script that can be used for writing Kuruk. So here's an issue: like, at what point or how do we look at a minority language community and say, okay, I know you're trying to preserve and to develop your language. Your language is typically written outside of the community in Devanagari or in Bengali, and now you have two additional scripts that you're going to use. So we have a situation where we have four different scripts that could be used for writing a minority and potentially endangered language. So how do we reconcile promotion and development of a language with practical necessity of being able to communicate in a language that the user community is fully bought into? Another one is the Gurung language, which is spoken in Nepal, also a Tibetan Burman language, which has at least 5 different scripts that have been invented for it. So in addition to Gurung Kema, there's also a script called Gurung K Pri, and 2 others, which I have not yet had the chance to look into. But we have intense competition within this community for among individuals to try to get their invented script to be the script that is associated with the Gurung language. Now, when we have 5 different scripts, it becomes very difficult to determine, how do we actually go about developing the the Gurung language in a way that is amenable to the user community while still respecting the desire of the community to choose a script of their own. Now, how is that community going to choose that script? Like, what are the criteria that they can use or that can be presented to them to help them determine which script is going to be the one that finally gets used by their community, or do they completely abandon the neography project and go back to using Devanagari instead? Now, going back to the motivations for encoding neographies, when it comes to Unicode, there are 2 general cases that we can kind of lump all invented scripts into. And these cases were presented by a gentleman named James Cass on the Unicode mailing list just earlier in this month. And so case 1, we have a situation where we have a speaker of the indigenous language who has designed a new writing system. And the goal is that the individual wants that script to be in Unicode so that it has a standard form. Because once it has a standard digital form, he can say, okay, here is the standard for the script, and now people can use it, and he can point to the standard to say, hey, look, this has been standardized. Let's use this script for writing our language, and here are the characters that you need to do so in a digital context. The other case is we have a speaker of indigenous language who's also developed a writing system. That individual and his community are actively using that script to publish books and periodicals and to do other sorts of literary development. They're teaching that script in the schools, and because of that community buy-in and the positive sentiment of the community towards that script, now they want to put that script into Unicode so that people can now extend their existing usage into the digital sphere and conduct all of their communication activities that they're doing now, in a non-standard digital way using standard Unicode encoding online. So with these 2 kind of cases in mind, Deborah and I came up with some metrics that could be used for navigating neographies in South Asia. Because ultimately the goal here is to we want to be able to provide user communities with the ability to use their scripts online. And the way to do that is through Unicode. The issue is that neographies, if they're not stable, can change over time. And that conflicts with the stability principle of Unicode, where if a script is encoded in Unicode, we can't go back and change the script block. Like, we can't take out characters. We can add new characters, but let's say that the community, 5 years down the line says, oh, we don't want this form of the letter K. We want to use this form instead. So then we'll have to add a new form of the letter K, but then we have a pre-existing character that people have already been using, and now they're using a new form. So that kind of disrupts the whole idea of a standard. So what we want is to say, okay, what are some ways in which we can evaluate neographies to determine whether they're suitable for encoding? Now, these metrics are not used to determine the suitability or the value or the usage or the utility of a given writing system. But that's up to the community to decide. These are purely technical metrics that we want to consider in order to determine, a threshold for, okay, is a script ready to be standardized within Unicode? So we want to know, is there a standard form of the script? And is the script a primary writing system for that given language? Additionally, is there institutional support for the script? Is it used routinely in education? Is there an officially recognized standard or a community standard that has been circulating? Is the script used in publications? Is it used in digital media? Like, for example, are people using custom fonts mapped to legacy encoding and producing PDFs or doing snapshots of screens and sending those via SMS? Is there any sort of religious or literary material written in the script? Is there a positive sentiment regarding the script within the community, and are there competing scripts that would diminish the suitability of encoding a particular script? Has the community developed technical or technological resources for the script? I mean, and the community here, I'll also include Craig Cornelius, who's also doing a lot of work in working with minority language communities around the globe to provide them with digital resources for representing their languages. And finally, who's the requester? Like, is it the community that's making a request, or is it the script inventor himself trying to promote a particular script, over another one? So I want to present two case studies here very briefly before I end and we move to a discussion. The first is Rohingya. No, so many individuals here may be familiar with the Hanifi Rohingya script, which was recently included in Unicode. This was a script that was developed by Muhammad Hanif in the 1980s for writing Rohingya. Muhammad Hanif and a panel or a community of other Rohingya scholars wanted to create an indigenous writing system that would differentiate their language from the predominant Burmese linguistic sphere that's used within Myanmar, within Burma, and also to differentiate it from Urdu, which was also a language that is used within the community there. And the idea was that this community is a Muslim community, and so by having an independent script that still evoked, the sentiments of Arabic and sentiments of Islam, they could write their language using a distinctive script that still tied them into larger global religious themes and communities. So this is an example of the Hanifi Rohingya script, which was inspired by the Arabic script. And I worked really closely with Muhammad Noor and other individuals starting back in 2012. And we had a final proposal for the script in 2016. And I consider this to be a model neography and a good case study for Unicode. Now, there's a much more recent model neography that I want to consider. And I know members of this language community here have heard Dave Kumar Sunewar speak about his efforts in revitalizing both the Koinch language and the Koinch or Sunewar script. So we back in 2010, I first encountered this script, and back then I called it the Gentish script, which was a name that I used that was derived from the name of the script creator. And I worked on this script in collaboration with a scholar named La Shankarelu Rapacha, who is a Sunewar speaker from Nepal. And we worked on this, but then I lost contact with him. And I kept monitoring the development of the Sunewar script over, let's say, the past decade, but it wasn't until last June when Jeanette got in touch with me and with Debbie to say, hey, we have a language community here that has a script which they really want to get into Unicode, and we know that there's some pre-existing work on this, so let's continue this to see what we can do. And to be honest, I was very familiar with the script, and I was very happy to hear that there was finally some potential movement but I was also very conservative in my threshold for suitability. I told Jeanette, I said, we need to determine whether the script is actively being used. Is there positive sentiment amongst the community? Are there multiple people using it? And I was very, very delighted to hear that the script was being actively developed. And Jeanette put us into touch with Dave Kumar Sunewar. And since last June, every month except for this month, we've been meeting on a monthly basis to discuss the script. And so this script was developed back in 1940 by Karna Bahadur Jantish. There's some belief that the script may have pre-existed Jantish, and that he was the individual who propagated it in the modern time. But it's used for writing a language that is known indigenously as Koinch Lo, or Koinch language. And the script itself is called Koinch Brese, and that language is known within the larger Nepalese sphere as Sunewar. And it was developed for writing this language, which is a Tibeto-Burman language. And it's used in Sikkim, which is in India, and also in Nepal by the Sunewar across both regions. So on the left here, we have an excerpt of the front page of a newsletter or newspaper called the Sikkim Herald, which was handwritten by Lal Rapcha. And on the right, we have an excerpt from a primary school book, which shows two letters along with example words. So the script was used both for in conventional media and also in education. And it wasn't until last year that we began to get a sense of just how far the script has come since the 1940s. So the script, we are working on encoding it in Unicode, and if we look at the metrics for suitability, it passes almost every single threshold that we've established. So it has a semi-formal standard. So the chart that's shown here is from a publication that was released a few months ago in a magazine called Hamso, and this is a chart that shows the script. And the beauty of this, to me, is that the script has been stable since the 1940s, and any sort of development that's occurred within the script has been done in a very systematic way, meaning somebody proposes new characters to represent sounds that are unique to Tibeto-Burman, and the community discusses whether that is an acceptable sign, what the name of that sign should be, and then they include it into the repertoire. As I showed, the script is used for education. It's used in print publication. It has stability. As you can see here, the community is engaged in font development. They've done some nice stylistic variations of the script. They have developed a keyboard, and thanks especially to Craig for helping the community develop a keyboard and other resources. And the script shows most importantly shows community buy-in. So based on the fact that it hits all of those metrics, I was very happy to continue or to revive the work that I had been doing previously to encode Sunewar. And I'm really happy to say that I think we have gone through numerous meetings of the script ad hoc, where members of the script ad hoc are almost at a point of approving the inclusion of the Sunewar script within the Unicode standard. So thanks to all the work that Jeanette and Debbie and Craig and others have done to really bring the script to the forefront. Now, all of this kind of points to the central importance of Unicode for language enablement. That Unicode is the foundation for the development of linguistic resources. It enables communities to communicate across borders using a standard platform. Now, whether Sunnular are in Sikkim or whether they're in Nepal is irrelevant because they're using Unicode across different devices, not operating systems. Now, Unicode also establishes parameters for tangible and visible aspects of identity. Now, the Sunnular can look to the Unicode encoding and say, okay, this is our language, this is our script that has been accepted in this international standard, and then they can use that to say, okay, we're going to promote this as our distinctive identity. Now, that's not the reason why it was encoded, but it can be used for that sort of promotion. And ultimately, for me and for many others who work on Unicode, the standard allows a way for us to revive, restore, and to grow cultural heritage through digital media. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done to enable minority and indigenous languages across the globe. A lot of those are contiguous with the 150 different scripts that Debbie has identified that need to be encoded, and those scripts, as I showed here, with the competing scripts for given language communities, they present new challenges to notion of language and linguistic vitality, and also to the Unicode standard itself. Like hypothetically, at some point, we may need to encode two different scripts used for the same language for the pure fact that they are objectively used and propagated by the same language community, but in different states, right? So that's my spiel. I mean, everyone here is already involved with the enablement of digital resources for minority languages. So I want you to spread the word, especially with regard to SEI. Here's a link to SEI, and please do get in touch with me and let others know how to get in touch with me, so that we can continue this discussion, for the future.